Father, what is this?
It's Indies, son. Goddamn Indies.
What's an indie?
Only the most unruliest, God-forsaken bunch of miscreants and misanthropes there has ever been.
Who brought them here?
I don't know, son. But if we let them in, they will surely be taking over.
Well, Father, you know what we should do?
Yes, son. We have no choice. We cannot let them take over our formulaic, automatonic way of life.
But Father, it feels so freeing.
Liberating. No, not you. No, son, not you. Come on, Father. Don't you know? Oh, no. It's always time to go, Indy, now.
Here yet again for 2024. This year in indie music. Yes, cheers to all of you. Cheers to my pal. And I couldn't, of course, not do this without my musical compadre, my blog partner on Fresh Buttered Popcorn when we do music reviews. We didn't do a ton this year, and some of that is going to actually seep into my list. I don't know if the same is for you, JD, but for me, that is definitely the case of some of the things that we did talk about. And yeah, we're going to go through. We have 10 of our favorites from 2024 of indie music. And so we wanted to clarify right off the bat that these are independent labeled music, either produced by the band themselves or a label that we deem independent enough that it has no mass distribution, doesn't have a corporation behind it, networking wise. Some of them are bigger independent labels, obviously, but some of them are also just the band themselves as the label. And we'll clarify a lot of that, I'm sure, as we talk about each of our stuff. So, but this was such a strong year in music.
Indeed.
I really feel like this was the toughest year that since you and I have been doing this, and I think this is our 4th time doing this.
It was a cluster. And if I did this list tomorrow, it would probably shift again. There are some that are going to be that are locked in, but there's a bunch that it's like, and some would make it into the list, and some would come out of the list. But
the order of the list would be different. I mean, yeah, it's unbelievable. So, with that being said, we did decide this year because we don't want to disparage any type of music from any avenue. So we decided that we had 3 albums each that were of major studio label releases that we want to give a little bit of kudos to as honorable mentions that would have probably been on this list if we had included studio albums, most likely. I know that a couple of mine for sure would have been. And then we have our obvious honorable mentions that just didn't creep into our top 10 list, but needed to be talked about. And so JD is going to start us off with his 3 studio albums and then go into his honorable mentions, and then I'll mention mine. So the floor is yours, Mr. Estrada.
Okay, so major labels. It was a hell of a year. But the 3 major labels that made my list were all from the UK. That's single awesome. One. So rather than starting with what is obvious, I'm going to start with what is not obvious and what I actually discovered this year. I went to see Idols live in September. Opening for them was a band called English Teacher. And their album, This Could Be Texas, their set impressed me to no end because it had been a while since I saw a band live that I was super impressed with everything that everyone was doing.
Yeah.
When I say that I'm impressed, it's that sometimes you listen to some stuff in an album and you go like, okay, so that's a synth or that's studio trickery. There's no studio trickery. These are the people playing. The bass player was playing a riff that I was like, how the hell is he keeping time with the drums and it was just awesome.
I've heard
So,
English teacher. They're very good at their musicianship for sure.
and it hits the ear very particularly. It's an album that I've revisited a lot this year, and I'm giving it a little bit more time just because, honestly, if you're gonna check out them, and they won a Mercury Prize for it, rightfully so. It's a hell of an album, and it's like that's their debut. Jesus Christ. I wish them all the luck for the second album. And I actually bought the album from them at the show. I bought Idols merch, and then I saw that they had a table. I saw the shirts. I was like, not so sure. And they had the CD, and I'm like, how much is the CD? $15. And I'm like, what? Almost ripped their hand off.
Nice.
Second off, if you know me, you know that one of my favorite bands is Elbow, and Elbow is one of the. As you get older, there are less favorite bands that become your favorite bands. Elbow is one, and Elbow is a band that became one of my favorite bands over the summer of 2004. Their new album, Audio Vertigo. I'm not gonna say it's my favorite album. It is amongst the albums that I listened to the most this year. But what I love about that album is trying to figure out how it's gonna figure into their live set, because they have a lot of melancholy songs, a lot of mid-tempo, a lot of slow songs, and this album is like
a lot of collaboration too. They had Blur's singer on there.
It had a lot of people came out swinging this year, and they particularly came out swinging. And it's not a band that's known for coming out swinging. And it's a band that most of the band members are in their late 40s and 50s, and they didn't get the memo, and it's got a lot of energy. And the third major label album that absolutely floored me, just because when a band meets expectations, it's a great thing. The Cure delivered songs of a Lost World. I'm a happy guy. I'm a fan of that version of the Cure, that they take 3 minutes to eventually get to a lyric, and they do that on a couple of songs, and I didn't mind once. And when that happens, dude, you're in for the ride. So those are my major labels. Something that I want to do, and it's something that I might do from here on out, single shout out. Sometimes there's a band that has a good song out or two good songs out. There's two bands that I want to mention. One, they're actually both duos, which is peculiar. Now that I just realized that. The first one, I'm not sure where they're from. The name is Hampton, and the single that they shared with me is Wide Open Spaces. And why do I phrase it that way? It's because they actually reached out directly, and it's like, hey, I saw that you're into indie music. Could you review this? I'm pending to give them a review of the track and just to share the track. I think it is soundtrack worthy, road trip worthy. I appreciated the approach.
Very cool road trip song. Very cool.
Very nice people. Very cool approach. Very mellow, not pushing. And I'm always here to support indie artists. If you have music and I like it, I'm gonna promote it. I did like this track. That's why I'm saying this. I'm not doing this because the guys were nice. There's other people who have been nice and made approaches, and I feel like next, because I'm not gonna fake it just to get more people to come here. If you share a track and I like the track, I'm gonna share it forward. So check out Hampton, Wide Open Spaces, small channel. Give them some love, and who knows? They've got 2 tracks out. I think they can surprise. I hope that they give me something to gnaw on.
Better than I've known, out on my own. Catch me on the wind, I'll begin again, become my own man.
The other single shout out is a band from Georgia that's called Hey Nothing. They labeled themselves, I think, folk punk or something like that. They got a couple of songs that are cool, they're okay, and then they have a song that I heard on a reel on Instagram, and the song is called Maine. Why do I bring this song up? That song I queued up a lot of times this year. There's a lyric that says, "I left my lungs in Maine," and it's like it's really heart wrenching, and it's a very beautiful song, or at least I find it beautiful, and many other fans do as well. I also bring that song out because they have a full studio version that has gimmicks and other stuff, and they have a couple of acoustic versions on YouTube. Guess which one I gravitate to? The one that is stripped down, the one that is bare, the one that it's them sitting on a corner and someone is driving with a Vespa. That's the one that really hits deep. And I don't want them to become a one-trick pony. I want them to see the success of that song, and to what resonates about that song: simple structure, heartfelt lyrics, and they both sing, so it's the harmonies. So if they focus on that, that little LP, that little EP has 4 songs. 3 of those songs are really great. The other one is okay. I'm not going to tell you which is which. I'm just going to let you, hey, nothing, check them out.
And if you feel it's not worth it, I pray to God that you'll lie. And I left my lungs in Maine.
Honorable mentions. This shifted so drastically. So I have to start with an artist who is one of my favorites and got dethroned at the last minute just because I took a step back and I was like, okay, how much does this album impact me? How much does it figure in the discography? How much am I going to revisit it? And I found a lot of question marks. Anita Franco's Unprecedented Shit. It's lyrically powerful. Sonically, it is abrasive. And I think that's why I ended up taking it out. It has to be abrasive for the stuff that she's singing about, but it's not something that I see myself revisiting more than her other work. There are songs there, including one called Roe versus Wade. It's Annie. It's Annie being Annie. It deserves an honorable mention. Then I'm going to mention these bands back to back just because I constantly get them mixed up. The Jesus Lizard with their album Rack. It's their first album since the late 90s.
Yeah.
And King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with Flight B741, which
my number 1 album of 2023.
Yeah. So
they did a metal album last year. You don't remember? I talked about it, and that was my number 1 album last year.
The thing is that friends of mine went to a live concert and they were like, they went through techno, they went through metal, they went through everything. They have like 23 albums, and I'm not exaggerating.
And they do like different ones from different spots from live. They have like a bunch of live ones out this year that I went through as well.
So I mentioned those just because the names are conducive to getting confused. It's like the Jesus Lizard and King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I don't know why they don't share.
And I believe, is Jesus Lizard from England? I believe they're from England. And
I don't know.
King Gizzard is from Australia. So
Jesus Lizard, they hadn't released something since I think 96, 98, something like that. And then they were like, we still got another album in, and they came out swinging like with an uppercut. Like
I haven't heard this album, but I like Jesus Lizard. I've seen them live. They're pretty good.
No, it is raw and it is awesome. And it didn't make the top 10 because there's another album that reminded me of this album, but it's a notch above it. We'll get to that when we get to the top 10. So Rack, raw, direct, in your face. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Flight B741. It sounds like it came from the 70s. They're here to have a good time. And that album is a good time. Next up is the Hard Quartet with their self-titled album. And this was a share from my very good friend, Antonio Gonzalez, brother from another mother, #LoudLove. He's like, dude, check this album out. that's a debut. That's another debut that I go like, that's a debut. Damn. It's impressive. And then the last one I want to mention is because musical discovery is a random thing. Depending on the year, YouTube is your best friend. Bandcamp is your best friend. This year, I found a lot of albums and artists thanks to reels and ads on Instagram.
Nice.
Finally, they did something. Finally, they did something right. They stopped trying to sell me stuff that I'm not interested in, and they send me a lot of rock music. There's a band called Overhead, and their album is called Intertwined. It is mellow. It is shoegazer rock. I listened to the ad and I was like, okay, let's give it a go. And I was like, okay, that song's good. Another song, damn, that song's good. Next song, that song is good too. So I will sum it up by saying, if this album had landed on my radar earlier this year, I'm not sure. Maybe it would be higher in the honorable mentions. I'm not sure if it would have cracked the top 10, but it is surprisingly very good.
All right. So my major labels, a band that I know would make my top 10 list, and that is Onto Others. I discovered them this year. They're kind of if goth went metal, very similar to.
I got one guess. Typo Negative.
Typo Negative. That's right. Yes, that's the one I was thinking of. They're very much like that, except they're not as ethereal or as very succinct and very dark as Typo Negative. Onto Others is kind of is a dark. They have dark lyrics, but they're kind of more of an 80s sounding goth. If you could imagine putting double bass behind and like a Sisters of Mercy, if you can imagine putting double bass and a little bit more bass, a little bit more guitar than bass around it, that's Onto Others. Very cool single called Butterfly that got into it, but then I discovered that the rest of the album is deeper and exciting and just really, really good stuff. Then I have The Last Dinner Party. These ladies from England with their second album, or this is their debut album, excuse me. They have this great song called The Feminine Urge. The Last Dinner Party, really good album. It's called Prelude to Ecstasy. One of those great albums. And I have to give love. I have to. Because I have to give love to Linkin Park from Zero. This album is really, really good. It is Linkin Park. It is Hybrid Theory-esque. It is, and she is a wailer, man. I mean, there's one part of one song where she just screams for 30 seconds straight. It is fantastic. It is just, and then she combines all the things that I think. It's a different band. It's not Chester's Linkin Park. Okay, we need to get out of that mindset and just realize that there are different Linkin Park, but there are still Linkin Park. It's got the arrangements. It's got Shioda's great raps. It's got his great vocal sense. It's got DJs, great companionships. Really good album. I really enjoyed every single track on this album. I think it's a really good one. And then for my honorable mentions, just like JD, I will mention that this was a really tough year for me. I had 16 albums in contention for the top 10. I had 6 that I was considering for the last 3, and most of those are here on my honorable mentions. I'm going to start with the Calamatics. Their debut album, Calamatics, a ska rock steady Jamaican band who Epitaph discovered. They have an awesome sound. They have awesome production. Maybe one of the best production albums I've heard. Great catchy dance numbers. The problem with this album is it blends all together. Once you hear one rock steady song, you hear the same beat over and over again. It's tough to distinguish different songs. I mean, they do change tempos and things like that, but it's not very standout. And that was that was where I decided they just don't make the list because my criteria this year was basically, am I going to listen to this again? I will probably listen to it again if I need a whole like ska album. But as far as songs appearing on my playlist and stuff like that, I highly doubt they will ever do so. Then I got to give a shout out to my boy Devin Townsend in Canada, the metal god of Canada, Power Nerd. His 22nd album. This is his first on Inside Out. He got a new label. He's just inventive, experimental, and this album makes my list any other year. It's just it's very. So with Devin Townsend, you get two things, right? You get a very strong, very powerful opening vocals, but you also get a very strong first three songs. He front loads his albums of every album I've ever heard of his, and then he kind of hits you with this weird shit that he has in the middle, right? He'll throw a disco song in there. He threw kind of like this weird ballad in this album, which is it's great. It's not bad song. It's just weird in the middle of this really strong power metal album, right? And this is just Devin Townsend and his sensibilities. You get used to it if you're a Devin Townsend fan, and I am. And I think the man is just a fucking musical genius. He plays every instrument. He does every vocal. I mean, it's really incredible. He's just solid all the way around. This album is very solid. It's just, again, same old Devin Townsend though. So like I said, it wouldn't make my list any other year. I had to bump it. It was the last one I bumped, to be honest with you. Then an album that I had from the very beginning that was always going to be on my list because it has my favorite song of the year on it. You're talking about songs, and that's Hanging by the Roots, Amigo the Devil, Yours Until the War is Over. Great first four songs, and then the album just drops the fuck off. And I don't know what happens, but there's like the first four songs, if he just released that as an EP, it would have made my list because it was those four songs rule. But the rest of the album is just kind of this weird, like there's kind of like there's some talking, there's like some what do you call that when it just talks over like lyrics and then he kind of mumbles in a few of the songs, and it's just, and then there's sound effects songs, and it's just like, okay, it's just not as powerful as the first four songs in the album. And then finally a band that I got into late, which was Vended, and their debut album Vended. They are the Nepo babies of Slipknot. They're from Des Moines, Iowa, and they are the kids of Corey Taylor and Clown. And
literally the kids.
Literally two of the kids from Slipknot. They sound very similar to Slipknot, but they do have their own sound. You got to give them credit. This is a solid debut. It's really rough though, and that's the only reason why it didn't make my list. The production on it is really rough. Otherwise, I would have thought it's reminiscent of Slipknot, early Slipknot, where the production is like, "Can we get a little clarity, please?" But it is really good. They have some really good songs.
That's the first album by Slipknot is the album.
It is the album. Yeah.
Everything else is playing.
Iowa is one of those weird amalgamations of.
No, but Iowa is the second album. The first album is Slipknot.
No. That's what I'm saying. Iowa is like that weird amalgamation of the first album going into their new incarnation kind of idea. It's really weird. And then I got to give a personal shout out to Eric Distand, who you might have all seen. I just had on 21 Grams. He put out a solo album. He is one half of the Faithful Sidekicks, the folk group, and he put out a solo album. And the one thing I got to give him absolute 1000% credit for is he put his heart on this fucking album. He just laid it all out there. And I thought it's intelligent, it's brilliant, in that it's just not my type of music. And
there's a song about Anakin. So
yes,
I did listen to the album. Musically, I liked it. Lyrically, I liked it. Vocally, it was hit and miss with me. And it's just a matter of taste, and it's not taking any credit away from him or anything. Musically, I found several of the arrangements on that album. I was like, damn, that's good. And for me, maybe I'll warm up to him if I listen to him more, or maybe I won't. Yeah. But at least from every album that I have on this list, even I mentioned, the very least that I listen to each album is 3 times, because if it made the list, I listen to it 3 times, and if it's in the top 10.
I have failed you, Anakin. A saber can block and it can burn, can defend and it can kill. Each Jedi must make their own light. I hope someday you will.
Let's get into our top 10. Number 10 on the JD Estrada list of this year in indie music 2024 is...
This has been a long ass year, and I realized how long it is when I saw that this album was actually released in February, and I was like, shit. And then I revisited the album, and I remembered why I liked it, and it's not because I like the guys. The album is genuinely solid. Lost Satellites, A Broken Light Bulb. I really like the band. I really like the people. I really like the music. I really, really, really like the lyrics and everything. For me, when you see a band that has a strong debut and then they have a drop off, you go like, oh, okay, here they had a pretty good debut. And I'm saying that not because I didn't love that album, but because I think that this is a step up. And I really
think this is the album that they found themselves.
I think so too. There are so many songs on this album that when I re-listened to it, I had it at my honorable mentions at one point, and then I listened to it and I was like, don't be a dick. Yeah. And just because there are so many tracks that just hit so hard. I'm going to highlight Getaway just because it's a faster track and it's a bit more conventional, but the one that I just keep going to, and the one that I'm pretty sure that it got a lot of hits from me, was London Rain. London Rain is just one that I have zero notes on it. It is, in terms of what that band can produce in terms of a song, dude, I am still impressed, and I'm still impressed that I thought it was 2023, but no.
My number 10 is a band called Big Fruit. Mucho Mistrust is the name of their album. They are Oakland post-punk band. This is their quartet's second album. It was released in August. And if you can imagine Deborah Harry and Justine Frischman of Elastica having a kid and then naming it Kim Gordon, you just described Hannah the Ham Diamato and her singing style. She's biting, edgy. This is a nice sense of self-wit and sarcasm in this band. It sounds at times like an old 80s oi British punk band. They have these incredible like industrial sounds where they utilize like the metal of the drum kit and scratching on the guitar, and it just has these like indie ripcord infections that just harmonize so well around her singing. And then there's times when she just goes basically full on just like yelling, and it's fucking great, and it is so amazing. And like I said, their lyrics are so phenomenal. Miles McDormand and Alex Post. Miles is the drummer, Alex is the guitarist. They really have a really good way of tempoing every song to bring it in. And if you listen to this song all the way through from 1 to 11 on the album, you'll get this kind of like weird connecting, like as if you were fading in from one song to the other, but they all stand out separately on their own. It's just beautiful.
Number 9, I have a double header because I was like,
cheating already.
No, but I was like, I gotta revisit this album to see if it was worthwhile, etc. And then I realized that the Smile released 2 albums. So it's basically, it's not a double
discography in 2024. Basically,
it's ridiculous. Okay, so why did I include Cutouts and Wall of Eyes on this list? Okay, Tom York has done a lot of music. Johnny Greenwood has done a lot of music. They have no fucks to give. They have nothing to prove. But and this is a power trio, out of this combination of musicians, the amount of music that's come in 2 years is ridiculous. And not only that, the quality of the music. If you don't like latter-day Radiohead, then you might not love this. If you do like latter-day Radiohead, then More than King of Limbs, think In Rainbows. Think that vibe. If you like that vibe, you're really gonna like both albums. When I saw that the both albums were there, I queued up the albums and I listened to. So basically, I listened to the albums 3 times back to back, and I was like, okay, this makes the goddamn list. And it's because how the hell is a side project this good? That always blows me away. Because Tom, and with his solo work, he has had some really special tracks, but the entire album, The Eraser is the only one that I would think would be a good album. The others, there's highlight tracks that I go back to and they're stellar, but it's not the albums per se I don't gravitate towards. 3 albums, no toss away tracks, pushing themselves musically, lyrically, everything. And just when you think you have it figured out, they throw you an 8-minute song that starts symphonic, like something from Johnny Greenwood's soundtrack work, and then ends with like Creep era grunge guitars. It's like, what the hell just happened? When I hear lyrics that resonate, and both albums have tracks that you listen to the lyrics and you go like, oh damn, that was profound. And I know that he's a good lyricist and whatnot. Some people might think that he's trite or too cryptic or whatever. I like his styles. And when you see that, and when you see that the guitar can be prog rock level complicated or bare bones 2-finger chords barely there, and then transition, it's musically, it is so adventurous, challenging, and refreshing that I worry for the future of Radiohead. That's how good this sounds.
Wow.
I'm not saying that it's better than Radiohead. I'm saying that at least I listen to this and I feel the enjoyment in the art.
You just made a bunch of hipsters cry there, JD.
But the thing is that what the magic of Radiohead is that combination of guys is always going to come up with something that you just don't expect. And if you see their discography, it's one of the most solid discographies that you're going to see out there, and it's one that always continuously challenges itself. And even their weak albums are ridiculous. And we can have an hour-long discussion of why Radiohead rocks. But the Smile Cutouts and Wall of Eyes, I was like, okay, let's see if it's worthwhile. And then I was like, when I listened to them back to back, I was like, okay, instead of a 10-song album and an 8-song album, this is an 18-song album or a double album with 2 vibes to it. And it's just impressive what they did.
All right, my number 9 is Something to Do. Here Comes the Panic. This is a Milwaukee, Wisconsin ska band with their 6th album on their own label, their self-titled label. They are great classic post-punk ska. Think Less Than Jake and Mustard Plug. That's the kind of ska that they are. They open with a love letter to coffee, which, obviously is already going to capture me, called Sweet Caffeination. And they have song titles like Draw Me Like One of Your French Girls, No, I Don't Want to Hear About Your Tattoo, No One Does, Sports Montage. They play to my grown-up 80s sensibilities very well, but they're very solid as a band. I mean, the guitars and the trumpets works in unison, just like any good ska band does. They really know how to create a melody that is very danceable. I mean, you can't help but just groove when you hear them, and every song is better than the next song, which is really impressive. To put out 10 songs that just keep doing that. And they even have kind of a retrospective song called Tiny Violin that I think is very, very poignant and very, very they're just solid. And the production is really good. You can hear everything. The drumming, the trumpets, the brass, the bass, the sax, everything is there, and it just screams like that ska that you've been missing in your life.
I'm a fan of Less Than Jake. I've cued Less Than Jake more than once this year. It's a surf band. If you see a surf video or a bodyboarding video, you're
This
gonna
is more
listen
of their
to.
old school Lesson Jake, like the early stuff, like beer and songs like that.
No, but you mentioned that, and you mentioned Mustard Plug, and dude, I'm sold. I'm absolutely sold because it had been years since I heard the name Mustard Plug, and I will be looking for them.
They
and
actually
listening
went
back.
on tour with this band, so the Something to Do has been their opening band for almost 2 years now. So yeah,
Mustard Plug. If you watch bodyboarding videos, that Millen Collin Lagwagon, the list goes on and on of bands that I learned thanks to surf videos. That brought me a smile. That it brought you a smile.
yeah.
So
Brett Gurewitz needs to sign Something to Do. Brett needs this in his rotation. Epitaph needs this band badly, which they have all those other bands that you mentioned. So yeah.
So add another great band to the roster. Why not?
Absolutely.
Okay. The next entry, number 8, Ocho. It's thanks.
It's the Ocho.
It's the Ocho. For the Ocho, it's thanks to you, buddy. I did not know the existence of this band. This is the only band that is on my top 10 that I haven't explored the entire catalog, just because I discovered them recently thanks to my brother from another mother, Mr. Joe Compton, which is Mannequin Pussy, and their album I Got Heaven. And I know it's on your list because when I listen to something and time after time I go like, damn.
Yeah.
And then another song, I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
And it's got variety, and it's got grit, and it's got some that the lead vocals are male and some that the lead vocals are female. And it keeps you guessing, and it keeps the tension, and you're like, yeah, and it's a type of album that makes me. There's a couple of tracks there that I'm gonna include on my. I have a playlist called For Bros, for when we're gonna go surf. It's gonna make that playlist, and to make that playlist, you have to pump me up and make me not question whether or not I'm gonna hit a section or not. It's like I see the section, I got that song in my head. That's like, I'm gonna hit it. And it's not because you recommend it. You've recommended a ton of things that haven't stuck. And when something sticks, I go like, shit, dude. And I've mentioned it more than once. I'm like, man, dude, that's a good album. And that's the theme. That's definitely a theme here. An album. It's a good album. It's not a good collection of songs. It's not a bunch of singles thrown in. The sequence of the goddamn album is so important. And all of these albums, I love how they flow. Some are more predictable, some are more typical, some keep you guessing, but how each album flows, dude. And this one I listened and I was like, okay, let's listen to it again. And then I finished it and I'm like, let's listen to it again. So if I listen to an album and you get 2 immediate repeat listens, dude, you get it's fantastic.
All right. My number 8, and this is going to make you smile. My number 8 is Lost Satellite, A Broken Light Bulb. Unlike you, I did not forget this album. This album was always there. I just want to give you a little punch there. Just a little haze there. I mean, Alex is just, goddamn. The arrangement of this album is so stellar. I mean, it is just, it goes from bangers, like strong rock slappers, like Scared and Days, and just then surprises the fuck out of you with London Rain. And
I can't get over that song, dude. It's one of my favorite songs of the year, and that's saying a lot. So, Alex.
Yeah, the beautiful
Salud,
piano.
Baba. Salud.
Yeah, the beautiful piano concerto there is just so gorgeous. The lyrics really strike. Like you, I think "Getaway" is my favorite song, though. "Getaway" just has a rocking aspect to it. You can feel Alan Johann. You can if Queens of the Stone Age was like not standing behind them during this recording. You could feel their presence as like this ghostly energy. But it's
not Queens. It's Alan. Alan Alan is so ridiculously underrated. It pisses me off.
But I want to say too that Alex is just, if you ever speak to Alex, if you talk to Alex, his cerebral mind for music is just off the charts. It is just, he is a genius level musician who has just such a great idea about how to not only arrange a song, but to make it work and make it work within a function of an album. Again, like you said, we're going to repeat this over and over again throughout this night, but the idea that this is a full album, that he believes in that concept, is just, it just pays off. It pays off in spades with this album.
Number 7. I never knew that Steve Albini had a band, Shellac, and they released the album. I think like a week after he died, something like that, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, he had a band. I'm like, okay. I listened to the album. I was like, shit, that's a good album. And I was like, let me listen to the entire discography. The one that blew me away was Dude Incredible. I was like, yeah, what an album. And then I came back to this album and I listened to it and I listened to it. And I listened to it.
For those who don't know Steve Albini, just to give context for those who might not know, he's the engineer behind PJ Harvey's Rid of Me and In Utero by Nirvana.
From Nirvana.
And
he's from Chicago, and he is very indie. He was very indie. He was very acerbic, and just his sense of humor was downright nasty. But he always told it like it was. He also produced Surfer Rosa by the Pixies. And his opinion. His opinion of the Pixies, how it evolved over time. It's brutal. But the guy was all about doing things indie. So the lyrics in this and the music in To All Trains, it's very raw. It's a power trio. It's 28 minutes long. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And it's on my list because I'm not gonna say which song. I want you to listen to the album and freaking guess. There's one song here that I put on repeat, and that there's a song lyrics that I'm already writing for a song called Alpha, about toxic masculinity. And it's something that eventually I'm gonna do. But for an album,
put a JD Estrada album on my list.
But for me to publicly say there's a song on this album that I can't get out of my head, and that it inspires me to write lyrics, and eventually I'm going to write a song and it's going to be nasty. That's the type of attitude that this album brings. It's a hell of a swan song. It's a shame that he passed away pretty suddenly. I'm kind of happy that it was sudden, and that he didn't fade away, and he just went out with, I think he had a heart attack or something like that. Yeah. Because I think that's very much in tune with his personality. Yeah. But if you want indie pure to the core, and a power trio that they have no fucks to give, and they're not messing around. This is the sound. Nice. It's not take it or leave it. It's take it and take it and take it and take it.
My number 7 is High on Fire, Cometh the Storm. Their 9th album. This is an incredible album. They added the Melbourne drummer Cody Willis to their band, and he makes a huge difference on this album. He gives them a little bit of tempo that they didn't have before, which is unbelievable for me to say, because if you remember last year, I talked about how High on Fire just kind of won me over with their tempo. This is just even much better. You often hear the phrase, what it would be like if you were to bottle energy. Well, I give you High on Fire coming. Lamb's Bread shreds into this relentless song mix of British new wave meets black metal meets doom metal. Tough Guy is one of my favorite songs of the year. This is a band that takes singles and flushes it into a concept album very much like a Halloween, like a Iron Maiden. They do this incredible idea where they have these like commercial, like really 3-minute songs, and then they give you these 7-minute opuses that are just composition wise just so brilliant. They're clean, they're strong. If Lemmy had a frog in his throat, he would be the lead singer of High on Fire. That's how much they rock and just kind of run. And it's just, I mean, the album cover, you'll see it here. It's just this cool pirate ship in the middle of this orange ocean, and it's really fucking cool. And it's just, it explains a lot, because this album really does have a concept, and it's very kind of neat when you kind of listen to it and kind of absorb it. It's one of those albums you have to absorb. It is, if you're not a Growler fan, a tougher album to get through, because there's some growling, but there is 2 songs where he completely harmonizes through the entire song, and it's beautiful. He has a voice. This is really great. I just think High on Fire is just one of those bands I discovered late a couple years ago, and now I'm just like, I'm gonna listen to everything they do.
Next on my list is Emil and the Sniffers. She was on. They were on my list in 2021.
I listened to this album. I had a real hard time with this album, to be honest.
I had a hard time, and then I got into it, and then I got more into it. Do I like it more than Comfort to Me? No, because Comfort to Me is a punch in the face. It is very direct. It is no pretense. It is punk rock. Amy is Bon Scott meets Joe Strummer meets the best aspects of Courtney Love.
Totally.
But a lot of Bon Scott. A lot of Bon Scott.
Yeah.
Try to imagine. Yeah, but try to imagine Bon Scott's swagger in a lass that has no fucks to give. So I listened to Cartoon Darkness. I do agree that it is a peculiar listen, but when you listen to it and you pay attention to the lyrics, what she's talking about, it is disturbing. It is some of the best writing of this year. I'm not going to say the best. I still think that English Teacher in terms of lyrics is the one that really caught my attention. But this one surprised me because I had heard the band before, and they're catchy. And if I had to mention one song for you to check out this band, and for me to put me forth, it would be Maggot. Maggot, I think it's just a song that I can't let go. But in this new album, it has almost that tongue in cheek from David Lee Roth, like California Girls and Just a Gigolo, but with snark, with grit, with brains. And there are so many lyrics that I listened to it the first time. I was like, what the hell? And then I listened to it again and I'm like, what the hell? And then I read the lyrics and I'm like, what the hell? It is an album that I think that made my list because it is exciting. It is fun. And I think in terms of the title, Cartoon Darkness, it cannot capture the essence of an album better. Her singing about the tiny bikini, me and the girls, oh Lord, the lyrics in that of them in the airport, it is so awful, because I've seen people like that, and she's like, yeah, this is us, and you better accept it. To come from a straight up punch in the face, which is Comfort to Me. Comfort to Me is a punch in the face.
Yeah.
To come up with this, I'm curious to see what's next, and that's always a good sign.
I'm curious to see what next with them too, because I did enjoy everything before this album. The problem with me for this album was the criteria we've discovered about how we decided these this year, and that is there is a lull in the middle of this album that I can't get through.
Okay.
It kind of is a chunk of the album where it's just kind of meanders a little bit, and she kind of poetically just kind of drifts, and it, for me, that's a tough part of the album for me, because this band usually with 2 or 3 minutes can just fucking kick you right in the nuts.
Yeah.
and this part is kind of a weird departure for them in that respect. So that's the only reason why it didn't make my list and was hard for me to get through. There's a couple of songs on this album though that will make my rotation throughout the years and in the playlist for sure.
Yeah. And that's
Right.
also something that we factored in. It's like we were talking about the list, and then I checked my list and from other years, and fortunately, 80% of the albums that I've given you in my year-end list, I still listen to consistently. Some drop off. I think that's just the nature of how we are. But I see a lot of these albums getting airplay.
All right, you all ready to watch JD fall out of his chair and smile larger than he's ever smiled in his life? Because my number 6 album, God damn you, I don't like you right now. Just to let you know, it's the 12th studio album released in April from a small little band from Seattle called Pearl Jam. Dark Matter is my number 6 album of the year. How the fuck it reached my list and got on my radar, I will never know. I actually had to listen to this excruciatingly from a trip from a pizza parlor back to my hotel in Atlanta from Mr. JD Estrada, who like, listen to this, right? And he played me the middle of the album when he should have played me the front of the album, because Scared of Fear is probably the best opening song of any album I've heard this year. Maybe other than Hanging by the Threads.
I think there's an opening track that I like even more than that one. We'll get to it.
Fear is really great. React, respond. I mean, look.
No, the 1-2 punch. The 1-2 punch is
dead.
We'll talk about this album more.
yeah. I have no doubt. These guys know how to do it, and you know the funny thing is like over time I've developed a real disdain for their inaccuracies of trying to experiment and not letting it work. This one, they kind of come back to the roots a little bit. This is very reminiscent of Go for me in a lot of respects. I really feel like there's Running is obviously my favorite song because I just fucking think that's a cool ass fucking riff, and it's just him running. Let's keep running. You know, it's just fucking cool. And Won't Tell is a great song. I mean, there's not a bad song on this album. There really isn't. I want to say there is. I really do. Like Waiting for Stevie is the okay upper hand, and Waiting for Stevie is where it kind of has this little tiny dip. But even then, I kind of gravitate for Waiting for Stevie. It's kind of a cute little song. It's just this little anthem that kind of goes in there. Wreckage is fucking cool. You know what the really cool thing is that I think that our friend Eddie Vedder leans into a lot here is what I think is what makes my number 1 album viable, and we'll talk about that later, is that he takes you on a tour of his musical history a lot in this album. There's a lot of incredible guitar work and a lot of great arrangement where it is kind of giving you a little bit of this album to a little bit of this album to a little bit of this album. And his ego takes you on a tour of Pearl Jam albums. It doesn't take you on a tour of music. But look, as much as I'm going to sit here and stomach praising this album and putting it on my list, I will say that Eddie Vedder is probably the biggest ego that I'll have on this list, and he loves himself more than anybody else on this list, and that's okay. I guess it works because this is a fucking really good album. I don't care what you say; it is really good. Scared of Fear, I've listened to. Okay, listen, I revisited this album because I knew it was going to be on JD's list. I just knew it. So from July on, I've been listening to it. I've really only listened to the first 4 songs. I wish I had gone deeper because Running would definitely have been one of those songs that would have been on my playlist about 40 or 50 times, and now it's going to be. For the remainder of 2025, I wouldn't be surprised that when YouTube sends me my year-end of music review that Running is my number 1 song. Scared of Fear, though, is really good. I don't care what you say. I think it's a really good opening song. React, Respond is really good. Wreckage is really good. Dark Matter is really good. I love that all these songs are less than 6 minutes long. There's not a single song on here that's more than 6 minutes, which I think is a testament to how good they can arrange songs still. And yeah, there you go. I'm done. I'm done fluffing Pearl Jam. Who I will say this, okay? Of all the bands on this list, they're the band that pioneered the idea that you could be indie on your own and not have to tow to the corporate executives or even the corporate executives of Ticketmaster and all of them. They were the first to challenge them. They won, and they fucking deserve all the accolades for that. And that's why whenever JD puts them on there, when JD asks me, can I put them on the list? I say, fuck yeah, you can put them on the list. And I have done the same tonight, JD. So there you go, brother. There's your validation. Number 6, Pearl Jam, Dark Matter.
I appreciate it. I have been between 4 and 5. I've been back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the thing is that the song that I like the most is on one album, and the collection of songs that I like the most are in the other albums. So by definition, number 5 is a band that I actually discovered again because of Instagram, and it's called Hello Mary. Their album is called Amita Ox, and there's a song called 3 that as soon as I heard the riff in the ad on Instagram, I was like, what the hell is that?
It's on one of my playlists.
that song I can't let go. And the thing about that album is that I it's the last song or the next to last song that it's just weird. It's like, what the hell? It's like, what the hell happened here? But that said, beyond that song, and I don't even remember the name of the song, the rest of the album, it's really good. And then there's 3, and 3 is just, I just keep going to that song. I keep going to that song. I keep going to that song. And I'm listening to other albums, check this list out, and then I go back to that song. And then I'm doing something, and then I go back to that song. I'm like, damn, how good can a song be? And a song can be very good because it is just melodic and fun and super 90s. And those are all things that tick boxes with me. This is another power trio. There are several power trios and power duos in this lineup. And the album led me to explore their discography. And this is another band that first album is good, second album is better, third album, they really hit their stride. And that's how I feel about this band and a couple of others. If this is what they release in 2024, I look forward to more.
All right. My number 5 is a band that I want JD to go check out. And I'm going to tantalize him with why here. My number 5 is a band called Wheel and their album Charismatic Leaders. They're a Finnish prog band. This is their 3rd studio album off of Inside Out Music. And they, if you can just get Schism in your head right now, they are Lateralis and 10,000 Days, Tool-ish. They have 7 songs on this album, 3 of which go over 10 minutes, 1 of which goes under 2. And it is just like perfect, like Tool sounds. They do these incredible intros. They have these incredible lyric content that kind of brings this interesting awareness to being present on this planet and seeing things that maybe you are blind to or you try to be blind to. So it's got a message to it. It's just they are so spectacular, and they are exactly what I think about Tool is they're the perfect band in terms of production. I don't think I've heard a better band production wise than Tool. I think they're orchestrated, they're very calculated, and they're clean. They make sure that everything matters, even if it's Maynard kind of in a megaphone kind of. There's this incredible sound effect behind it. Wheel doesn't utilize that. Wheel is much more stripped down, but it is the perfect production. This is probably the best produced album and most balanced album I've heard. This is just spectacular stuff. He even sounds like Maynard at times, and it's just kind of uncanny. You almost think that they're like a Tool tribute band, but their lyrical content is just so much more profound. Look, and I say that with grace. Maynard has incredible insight, but it's mostly personal insight. It's mostly internal insight. This is a scope of reality from a band that sees things because they're in Finland that us Americans don't see. And I think it's really important that if you do get into this band, you read their lyrical content, because I think you'd be blown away by it. It had to make my list. It is the reason why Billy Corgan didn't make my list this year. So.
But he did make mine.
which is a great segue, right?
Which is a great segue to number 4. When's the last time that you gave a shit about a Smashing Pumpkins album?
I can probably think about that and think about that for a long time.
The last time I heard a full album that I enjoyed, and it still had its hits and misses, it's going back to '98 to Adore. After
I go
Adore,
further back than that. Melancholy's probably where I was at right there.
But Adore took me by surprise, because they had to make do. Their keyboardist died from an overdose, and they had to fire Jimmy Chamberlain because he was also in the hands of heroin.
Yeah.
So they pivoted in a really interesting way. I think Adore is underappreciated in a lot of ways, and I think that starting in 2000, it's been overbloated time and time again. It's like Machina or Makina, I don't know how they want to pronounce it. I say Machina. It has some cool tracks. It has a lot of hits and misses. Oceania has more good tracks than it's given credit for. And by all means, revisit that one, because a lot of people give it a lot of shit, and it's a better album than it gets credit for. Does it have some lackluster tracks? Yes, it does. Yes, it does indeed. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't have some great songs. Monuments to an Elegy, it's there. I can listen to it, and I've enjoyed it more certain days for some reason. Shiny and Oh So Bright, I think, has a couple of really good songs. Sear is a double album that isn't a double album. It's got some great tracks, but it's very one note. And Atum is 33 songs, 2 hours and 13 minutes, and it's self-aggrandizing to a point where you go like, dude, what? First 2 discs in that album have it's a lot of hit and miss. Third disc in that collection, I think it's the most solid one. But there's a lot of filler that you go like, dude, what the hell? It's Billy, just doing what he believes in. Enter Gori Mori Mei. 10 tracks, 44 minutes, and I think my favorite intro song to an album this year, because Eden, when I listened to it the first time, I was like, okay, and then it just kicked me in the nuts, and I was like, yeah. It do
intros well.
It gave me everything I wanted in a Smashing Pumpkins album, plus 2 songs that are just okay. So 8 out of the 10 tracks are probably some of the best Smashing Pumpkins that I've heard in more than 2 decades. I think Jimmy Chamberlain had a lot to prove and a chip on his shoulder. People had forgotten that he's a beast on the drums, and he's like, nah, here's a reminder, baby. and he goes to town on so many of those tracks. And we did a written version of a review of this album. I was really impressed, and I always said that the drums had this bounce to it. And this album has this bounce and this energy, and there's a lot of energy. And these are, again, there's something about guys in their 50s, in their 60s that say, you know what? I ain't done. And it's not that I'm just not done and I'm not going to phone it in. I'm going to kick your ass. I really, really love this album because it has the only thing that it didn't have that I love from Smashing Pumpkins is those long, sleepy, dreamy interludes that are in Siamese Dream.
Mm-hmm.
That my favorite sounds from Smashing Pumpkins are probably that. Go to Soma from Siamese Dream. That song is just I listen to that song and it just I can just float in a pool all day listening to that song. That dreamy aura is not very present here. What
Mm-hmm.
you do get is the guitars and the bass and the drums and in your face, and I just liked, and they sold it that way. This
Mm-hmm.
is the leanest, most direct album we've done in a long time, and I really hope it's not a
It's
one-off.
also the most rocking album they've done in a long time.
It's like Gish, dude. It's got crunch to it, and again, there's two tracks that are more of the synthy stuff that they've been doing in the last couple of years. But in this balance equation, having 8 tracks that kick you in the nuts and having 2 sit, I can live with that happily to the end of days, dude.
Eden Sekomian, who goes there, for me, and I said this during our review, strongest lyrically for me.
Mm.
The lyrics here are really, they're really pedestrian. They're really, that's where I have struggles with Smashing Pumpkins. I think when they're inventive, when they're creative, is when they're not trying to fit into the mold of this is verse 1, chorus, verse, bridge, verse 2, chorus, bridge. They do a lot of that because that's how they structure songs so well, and that's why they get so much radio play. I mean, it's smart business. It's just terrible songwriting, in my opinion. And Billy Corgan,
it's not Bush.
and if it was, it would be even worse, to be honest. But I mean, look, when they're at their best, and this is something I've wrestled with this entire year since we did that review, actually, because I've gone back and listened to Siamese Dream and listened to Melancholy. When they're at their best, it's when they're retrospective and influenced by what they're talking about. They're not being political. They're not being engaged. They're being engaged by their own personal feelings. And I think Billy Corgan's strongest. I think that's why Eden works so well, is because it's really a personal story for him. And the rest of this album is just them kind of just trying to find that rocking sound that they've missed over the years. And it's really tough for me. And that's why it's surfed out of my list. It stayed there for a long time, but
maybe I did. Maybe I didn't put a lot of emphasis in the lyrics. They're catchy, they're functional, but that's not what I love about this album. What I love about this album is
the musicality of this album is fucking spectacular.
It shows that Billy Corgan is absolutely underrated as an Axeman, and people. I used to think that James did a lot more in the band, and Billy is definitely the one who does the heavy lifting by far.
Yeah. My number 4 is also an album I reviewed on this channel on one of my Touch of Indies that I abandoned halfway through the year because I just found that writing them is just so much easier, and I wish I had written this out. I know probably might do a track by track of this. I don't know because it's so much past I have already reviewed it, but it stuck with me and stayed on my top 10 for the year, and that's Darkest Hour, Perpetual Terminal. I'm so glad I found this metal band. This was released back in February, their 10th studio album. The riffs on this and the cascading choruses and just the altruistic headbanging that holds up for me on songs like A Prayer for Holy Death or The Nihilist Undone, and just the way that it constructs songs and put them in a structure that is palatable for those of us who are not big Scream fans, right? Or not big Growler fans. They do an incredible job of harmonizing when it needs to be harmonized, and when they need that grit, that growl. It fits what they're doing, and yet it's very clean. It's very well done. A lot of great. I don't know what you would call this, JD, and maybe there's a technical term for it. But when a guitar goes into a note and then doubles and triples that note on top of it and just kind of repeats that, where it's kind of this like kind of idea. They do a lot of that, and it's really fucking effective. So
Okay.
it really.
I'm not sure if you're talking just delay or triplets, and just.
It's probably triplets is probably more of what I'm thinking it is, but and the cool thing is they utilize that as like a bridge to the actual like rhythm of the song, which I think is really cool. Which I hadn't heard a metal band do in a long time, so I really love that. But Perpetual Terminal doesn't have a bad song on it until about the end of the Mausoleum. You can just, if they just took Mausoleum off of here, this probably would be one of my favorite albums of the year. But Mausoleum is a terrible song. But otherwise, the other 10 songs on this album are really good.
I dig it. Number 3 for me is from Poland. Polish industrial music. Chagrin has been on my list years prior. I think with the album Standstill, but I also listen to Falling Dreams, and there's a song there that I just go back to. It's called Shadows, and it's got that techno metal vibe to it that I love. But her discography is great, and when I say her, I mean her, because her husband Eric does play guitar on this album. Everything else, it's her. And the production, she might get help from other people, but everything else and all the arrangements are her. All the vocals are her. All the lyrics are her. Indie artists from Poland, if you like Nine Inch Nails, if you like flares of Depeche Mode, latter day Depeche Mode, think of the guitar effects there. If you like vocals like Evanescence, not as powerful as Amy, but that vibe to it. If you like How to Destroy
Angels, a lot of notes like Evanescence does, like Amy does.
She doesn't, and that's why I like Chagrin more, because Amy does it, and I sometimes get those American Idol vibes to it, and it's like
it's all fucking. It's like show no tell kind of bullshit.
It's if you held it less, it would last longer for me, and Chagrin does that, and lyrically, it's interesting. The arrangements, 10 tracks, have no notes. If you like Nine Inch Nails Hesitation Marks, it has a lot of feel from a couple of tracks in that album. Natalia Gadzina, she's very cool. She's very approachable. She's very nice. She's extremely talented. When you listen to a song and you listen to an album and you listen to a discography and you follow an artist, that means something. When you listen to a 1 hour, 20-minute show with her and another person on stage with not much flair to it, that says something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've seen my Instagram, you've seen that I've shared her music and her videos, and I've done it on Facebook and I've done it on Twitter, just because, again, industrial rock from Poland. This is not something that should get a lot of airplay, but it is, and she's actually rocking the charts over there. She's getting radio airplay, and I'm really, really fucking happy. She's very cool, very talented, and this is the type of album that it's not that you can just listen to it in one go. It's that you can put repeat all, listen to it a couple of times, let it sink in. I'm a huge fan of industrial rock, and have found that well runs dry really quick. There aren't many bands that really take the time to do the craft in a way that is compelling. She's
brought me back to Stabbing Westward last year, so
Stabbing Westward last year really surprised me. Just because
that's a great album that I have listened to on repeat for this last year.
Again, I checked my list and I was like, am I sharing albums that I'm going to be re-listening to? And fortunately, the answer is yes. Um, I've given Sugar plenty of airplay on YouTube. I bought a physical copy of the album. I have it in the car and I've listened to it at least 4 times already. It gets regular play on Apple Music because it gives some royalties. And this is not to throw a bone. This is to shine a light. She's really good, and I really hope that she can break through and have better opportunities because her and Eric with Chagrin have a really interesting project. They have another project which is more new wave post punk. It's weird, but they only have 2 songs out. The band is called Grok, and it's fun but very different. It's very different.
More out. Let's get it on. Let's get it on this list. My number 3, Mannequin Pussy. I Got Heaven. I came into this album about a week before JD, and I told him about it the moment that I heard Epitaph's 4th. Again, Epitaph. I mean, Britt Gerwitz, you're doing it right, buddy. You're my, somebody who I appreciate. 4th studio album released in March. This is my latest entry of the countdown. I mean, Mickey DeBice is a fucking powerhouse. This is just right in your face. It's fuck you. I'm here. Deal with it. And it's so awesome. What if we were just flat? What if Jesus himself ate my fucking snatch? What if I'm an angel? What if I'm a bore? And what if I was confident? Would you hate me more? I mean, how can you dislike that? That is fucking gorgeous. It's fucking brilliant. She's spiteful like a god. That's what she says later on in the song. I mean, this fucking album just kicks fucking teeth down your throat. And of all the albums that I have on this list, there is not a stronger second half than I Got Heaven. After okay, there is a slew of 4 songs that just fucking destroy you, and is the strongest stretch of any album I have on my list. It is Softly, and then into Of Her, which is my favorite song on the album. Of Her is my favorite song. Aching and Split Me Open. Sorry. I Got Heaven is my second favorite song of the year, behind Hanging by the Roots by Amigo the Devil. I just think I have listened to that song umpteenth amount of times in the last 4 weeks. That song will be probably next to Pearl Jam. God damn it, I can't believe I just said that. And that is just, I mean, there are musical arrangements when they get kind of indie rock, when they get kind of indie pop. Yeah, it's a little off-putting, but it is still the lyrics of the songs that are in there are not for the faint of heart. It's not like, hey, we've got flowers. Here's flowers for you. No, it's like, go fuck your flowers in the back of a Volkswagen and lift my skirt up and see what I've got behind you, which is an AK-47, you motherfucker, right? And it's kind of that's the kind of shit you get with Mannequin Pussy. I mean, the name itself should just kind of cue it off that they're not your average fun-loving, beautiful, Christian nice band, right? It's just like these guys bring it, and they bring it strong. And this is a banger of an album, and it's just easily my number 3.
Nice. I dig it. So number 2. You know the 2 albums that are left on my list.
I do. I'm curious about the order, but I know which 2 they are.
Nah, you know the order, and it's let's get into it. So number 2, Thank from Idols, and that's how you're supposed to.
Tell everybody why it's named that, because you have the greatest explanation in the world for it.
No, the name that they say that's how a publication described the sound of their guitar. And I'm like, that is just a brilliant album name. Yeah. Is this the best Idols album? No. That would be, for me, the best album is Ultra Mono. The best songs are Enjoy It as an Act of Resistance. but I like Tank more than Crawler. I think that Crawler has higher high points, but as an album, I like Tank more. Is it a bit more conventional? Because of its intro of Idea, a one and Monolith that have that intro outro feel. Is it taking a page from Radiohead because they shared a producer for this album? Perhaps. And I was like, is it still gonna make my list? And then I pulled it up, and it's like Idea One. I like it a lot. And then Gift Horse comes in, and it's like, let's do this. And then Pop 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 is one of my favorite songs of the year, just because it's a song that I can put on a repeat one, and I can listen to it and just get into a mantra. And it's got a really funky, weird groove to it. A gospel, people are gonna go like, oh, is that a good or not? And I'm like, okay, let's go back to what we said at the beginning, how an album flows. And I love how this album flows, and it keeps you guessing, and it gives you a little breather, and then it hits you again. They have other albums that are more relentless. Here you have Hollow Notes and Jungle and Gratitude, and those three after Grace. Grace is like, give me good. It's like, oh God. Yeah. And then it's like 1, 2, 3, and then they close out with Monolith, which is super mellow, and it's just an outro song. It's almost a throwaway, but the bangers bang. The introspective ones are really introspective. You have some interludes here and there. And when I listen to the tracks that I love from this album, every single time my mood improves. And I go like, this is why I like music, goddamn. There's some people that go like, well, I just listen to music. No, I live music. I breathe music. I drink and eat and shit and fucking through me. And this album, it gave me from them a more conventional structure. They toned it down a little bit, because when idols bang, they bang hard. So this is not the biggest banger. And I think it's like, how can we expand the set list? And not just expanding the set list, let's expand the set list with an album. So it serves so many purposes that there's just no way that I can't include that on my list. And lyrically, it's not the best one, but when it has special moments, it has really special moments. And I'm a fan. And this is when we're talking about, when I mentioned Elbow, they became one of my favorite bands in 2004. And Idols became one of my favorite bands in 2021. What? So I'm a big fan.
Well, I was introduced to them by you, and how can I shit on it after that glowing review?
You have disagreed with Smashing Pumpkins, and I was cool with it. You have disagreed with other stuff, and I was like, you have a point there, and you made points that I was like, I agree with you, and I disagree with you, and that's the beauty about music. The beauty
Gift
about
Horse
music.
and Hollow Notes are songs I can go back to.
Dancer makes me want to dance. Like,
dude, it's such a hard song. All right, look, this is my fear. I said this when I reviewed Crawler, when we talked about it last year. Was it last year? Was Crawler out 2023? I don't remember.
Yeah, no. I think it's 20.
It was number 1 on your list. It was number 3 on mine. I remember, and I said this. I had a fear. I had a fear that this is where they were going, and this is a boring ass album. I'm sorry, it's just so boring. It is commercial as fucking shit. It is toned down. It is tone deaf. It is just. It is really, really difficult for me to get through. I really just. Idea One is okay. I when they did the exact same thing in Crawler, I accepted it. This was just worse. It was a worse version of that, and it's like Unfortunately, Gift Horse follows that, and Gift Horse is fucking righteous, and Hall & Oates is a banger. There's just not enough banging here. There's just not enough of what
of what we love. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But
it's
I
hard.
still
It's
like it,
hard.
dude.
I mean, they're musically they're fine. They're better musicians now than they were back in Ultramono and Joy of Resistance, Joy for the Act of Resistance. I grant you that. But if anybody wants to see the essence of this band, watch the tiny NPR Tiny Desk of this band. It is just
100%.
phenomenal. It is what makes them, and I guarantee you, their live show fucking rules. As JD can attest. I'm still clamoring to do that and see them live. Being a new fan, I just got one of my bucket lists off this year in Clutch. I have a feeling it's going to be a very similar experience for me with Idols. And Joe Talbot is a genius as far as just kind of fuck it all music kind of goes and fuck it all lyrics kind of go. But they just, I love their twang when they get twang, the tang. But God, man, this is so slowed down. It is neutered Idols, and I just don't like it. I think they're so much better when they're outside of their element, and when they're like, "Fuck you, I'm gonna do what I want," and this is me thinking they appease to whoever their producer was, who said, "You know what? To sound like a more mature band, you have to do it this way," and I just think it's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, since they tour so hard and they play so hard, to me, it feels like it's almost a rebound album after you're burnt out. That's what it sounds like to me. Crawler, I liked it because they're kind of broken.
Crawler grew on me later on. It grew on me a little bit harder. So maybe this album has a residual effect to it,
but it is a lot more accessible. It is a lot more radio friendly, and a lot of people will shit on it because of that. But for me, it feels like they needed something more mellow, and I've seen them live. I don't feel like they appease at all to anyone. That they made it more palatable or doing something like that, I think it's part of their no fucks to give attitude. Because when you Dancer is gonna piss purists off, and this is the type of band that is up to telling their fans, we're gonna give you the song whether you like it or not. And which is something that I have to give credit to Billy Corgan and Smashing Pumpkins. He gives zero fuck. So more accessible, maybe, but it not to the point of Goo Goo Dolls that just pivoted 180.
But if they're not careful,
no, if they stray further, it would be a problem. I think here they strayed as much as pop sensibilities can do. I think it's not their limit.
That we're seeing the Idols that we know and love, JD. That's the Crawler had 4 or 5. This album had 2, in my opinion, maybe 3. If you give pop a chance, but they're getting less and less, and that's where I fear. Yeah,
I think this is setting us up for the next album. Part of what they want to do, and just to expand their sound and show that they're not one trick ponies. Brutalism is brutal, and it is almost one note, and it is very in your face.
Yeah.
Joy as an act of resistance.
My favorite album, by the way.
It has my favorite tracks, but Mono is the one that I discovered them because of Carcinogenic. So because of that song, which they didn't play live, and it doesn't get the love that it deserves. That song is fucking phenomenal. So you have 3 albums back to back to back that are relentless. Crawler is them kind of fixing themselves after being relentless so long. This one is more accessible, and I wouldn't be surprised if the next one is just a fucking kick on your chin.
All right, my number 2 is another album that stayed with me for the entire year. And it's my boys from El Segundo, my homies from El Segundo representing. I grew up in Torrance, which is like El Segundo and Torrance are like right next to each other. So if you didn't know that, but I'm giving you a geography lesson tonight. This is their 6th album. It's on Epitaph. Again, Brett Gurewitz rules. Yay, Brett Gurewitz. Ghost Inside, Searching for the Solace is my number 2 album of the year. Metalcore's newest darling. They're going to headline a lot of European shows this year. They're going to headline a lot of tours. They are the it band next to Bring Me the Horizon. I think both of those bands are going to, and Soulwork. I think all 3 of those bands are going to come out and be the next wave of Slipknot and all the bands that before it. They have a beautiful sound that's well produced. Going Under is just a fucking banger right off the bat. And then they go into if you think that's a banger, wait till you hear Death Grip. It is like punching you in the face and then spitting out some teeth. It is awesome. And then they slow it down and they have this nice melodic flow throughout the rest of the album. They come into this with this really unique sound from this song called Breathless that I think is just so fucking just like beautiful and just angelic in a lot of ways. Jonathan Vigil is one of the newest found vocal masters for me on this planet. I think he has a range that is unique, but is very recognizable. And this band plays along, harmonizes along with him very well. And it's very well done. It's very orchestrated. 11 songs. I didn't find a bad fault with any of them. A lot of great little guitar intros that I think are just super, super important for metal bands. Think of like a Battery or a song like that. They do a couple of those that are really impressive. And they do one with the drum kit that I think is just fucking amazing. But Ghost Inside is just one of those bands that stuck with me the entire year. I introduced them to a bunch of my metal friends who now love them too. So I did something right and I spread the love, and I'm happy that people are gravitating toward them. That is just a beautiful, beautiful album, and I'm real excited to share it with everybody. Searching for Solace, Ghost Inside, my number 2 album of 2024.
Nice.
I mean, there's no doubt we all know what number 1 is, but here we go. Drum.
Number 1 is my favorite band. If Pearl Jam was a color, that's what I would bleed. My favorite album from Pearl Jam is not 10. It's actually No Code. And people go like, what the fuck? For several reasons. I didn't know No Code was going to be released, and I was at a record store, and I said, oh, what is this? And then I see the side, and it says Pearl Jam, and I probably squealed. And they didn't want to sell the album because it was supposed to sell the next day. And I basically begged the guy to sell me the album. He's like, do you have cash? I was like, yes. And he's like, don't tell anyone. And I'm like, I will not. Because literally, I went into the store 10 minutes before closing and saw the album, and I bought it. So I love that album because of that, and because it has some of my favorite songs and some of the most important songs to me. So if you want to get to know JD a bit better, listen to Present Tense and listen to Around the Bend. Those are 2 of the songs that I want to be played at my funeral for anyone who's keeping notes. What I love about this album, about No Code, is that it is the one that I can listen to the most in succession. I can listen to that album 10 times in one day, and it's not a problem. I love this band. And I listen to this band ad nauseum. And I recognize that. I recognize that I'm biased. I haven't done the written review because I wanted to do this first, and I want to do that eventually, just because. But the sequence of songs in this album, and at 48 minutes, this one's 48 minutes, and No Code is 49 minutes, and I'm like, what the hell? It is as digestible an album as these guys have produced, in the sense that there are other albums that I might like more than Dark Matter, but in terms of being able to listen to it more than once, Dark Matter is pretty high up there because it is very listener friendly. Some people are gonna shit on the production because it's too bright and whatnot. And I know people who have shit on it for several reasons. And by the way, the first time that I listened to this album, I wasn't sure about it. I was like, because I didn't know what to expect. And it's like, just recalibrating your expectations. And then I kept listening to it and I kept listening to it. I think by excellence, they love a 1-2 punch in the first two songs on their albums. That's always something big. And then third song is kind of a curveball. That's kind of their formula. This is no variation. Scared of Fear and React Respond. These guys are pushing 60, and I love that about this album, and I love that about so many artists on this list. I love that The Cure came out with an album that came out swinging. I love that Smashing Pumpkins released an album where at least musically, lyrically it sucks and it's pedantic, okay, but musically they're like, hey, we got chops. I love that a lot of artists that are supposed to be phoning it in refuse to do so, and this album continually surprised me. And a lot of people are like, they want to look for things to shit on, and it's like, dude, Dark Matter is very formulaic, and I'm like, you're not gonna recognize that Matt Cameron absolutely dominates the drums in that song. You want to ignore that. You want to ignore the reality that Matt Cameron proved that he's a drum god in that song.
For what? They haven't done an album like this in decades.
It's something that intense. No, they just.
It reminded me a lot of Go. It reminded me a lot of that.
It doesn't lose steam. I think that's what happened in several of. If you go to Gigaton, you get to. For me, Gigaton until track 5, it's brilliant, and then 7 o'clock, Never Destination, and Take the Long Way, and Buckle Up, and Comes and Goes. There's a big chunk there that lulls. I enjoy it, but it lulls, and it definitely this is the album. The high point at the beginning, high point at the end. If you look at Lightning Bolt loses steam quite a few times. If you look at Backspacer is hit and miss for some people. I enjoy all these albums, by the way. I would have to go back to the Avocado album in terms of an album that doesn't lose steam. Mm-hmm. But before Avocado, there was Riot Act that has some moments that are kind of weird. Binaural that has some moments that are kind of weird, but I love that album and it's super underrated, and so on and so forth. But when I listen to No Code, it is start to finish a couple times in succession every time that I listen to it. When I listen to Dark Matter, it is the same because there's no throwaway tracks. They do some that are more poppy, and you go like that kind of sounds like Kelly Clarkson, and I'm like, and is that a bad thing? With Upper Hand, that intro is like U2, and I'm like, just because they use delay doesn't mean that it's a U2 ripoff. It's a great song. Waiting for Stevie is very, very nostalgia, very 90s-esque, and I love it. And for me, you're like, oh, this is, I love that track to death, just because it gives me the riffs that it's just like big 90s riffs.
Yeah.
So that Running is awesome. A lot of people shit on Something Special. I think it's a very sweet song that he wrote for his daughters. I think it's very heartfelt. I think he's 60. He's gonna be 60 in a couple of weeks, and he wrote a song for his daughters about telling them that there's something special and to love themselves. What a dick.
Can I say the one thing I think about this album that I think is different from all those ones that you say fall off is even when they change tone or when they go lyrically different styles, it fits within the structure of the album that he's presenting here. Dark Matter doesn't lose steam because even if it slows down to a ballad tempo or it does the 90s riffing, it follows something that kind of leads it into that, and I think it's brilliantly orchestrated. It's very well arranged, and I think getting back to that for them was probably an important thing.
Nah, and again, and because is Setting Sun their best closer? No, by a long shot. It's not Release. It's not Indifference. It's not Immortality. It's not Around the Bend. It's not All Those Yesterdays. It's not any of those songs. But you finish that song and the album starts again, and you're not going to take it off, or at least I won't take it off. And I love that aspect of it, that they have a 49-minute album that you go like, okay, let's listen to it again. And it's not that there aren't gripping moments here. It's not that there aren't emotional moments here. It's that it gives me enough for me to want to listen to everything again, and to listen to it and read it, and to listen to it and focus on the guitars, and to listen to it and focus on the vocals, and listen to it and focus on the drums. It's got a lot going for it. It's my favorite band for several reasons. And dude, what can I say? They're my boys.
It earns a ton of respect from me, and I just think it's a really good album. And yeah, I had no doubt it was going to be your number one, but I think there's merit there, and I think it's beautiful. And for anybody who's going to shit on us because we picked because my number one pick is also very commercially known. Listen, the way these guys present themselves is very indie in the respect that they're about their fans, and Pearl Jam's about their fans. Pearl Jam does these love letters all the time to their fans, and Dark Matter is an incredible love letter, I think, to the fandom of Pearl Jam. And everybody else can shit on it, but as long as their fans, their core fans, really dig it, that's all they give a shit about, and that's admirable in so many respects.
Mm-hmm. How about you? You're number one.
My number one, again, very commercial. Jack White's No Name is my number one album of 2024. It's the sixth studio album by American rock musician Jack White, of course, of White Stripes fame. It was there's the story behind the album and why I love the story of the album and the album itself. And of course I am judging it on the album itself, but the story is just as equally as awesome. And that is, this was an album that actually came out in July, but did not come out to the public. Instead, in his record store, Third Man Records, he included it in any purchase of anybody who made a purchase of an album in his store. He included this album with that purchase, and they didn't know it. He just gave it to them. And so for 4 months before this album was officially released by Third Man Records and out there into the world, actually, 2 months. Okay, 1 month, July to August. But that's what he did for the first month. And then everybody who was part of his fan club got an early listen to the album. So they got MP3s of the album. That, to me, that's as indie as it fucking gets, man. And that is just brilliant. And this is a guy who respects the idea that he has this power that he can utilize. And to get into the album itself, this is a tour de force of musical history. I mean, he's a blues guitarist that plays punk rock, that plays rock and roll. If he was doing this album like robot style, I mean, and there's no doubt Lemmy would have appeared, Bono would have appeared, B.B. King would have appeared. I mean, that's just the range of this album is so fucking amazing. He hooks you with choruses after chorus after chorus. It is just so brilliant. Old Scratch Blues. This is how I'm feeling. Oh yeah. This is how I'm feeling. Oh yeah. This is just so brilliant. What's the Rumpus, which is kind of his personal journey of his spiritual journey, and the record company's fucking with that, and he's like kind of there, his fuck you to them. Tonight Was a Long Time Ago, which is kind of his fuck you to everybody who only knows Seven Army, whatever the fuck that popular song is, right? And Number One with a Bullet, Morning and Midnight. These are just there's raw, and then there is orchestrated raw, And yes, he's very polished. He's very orchestrated. And I think a lot of people have a problem with that. And I think a lot of people want to shit on him. Seven Nation Army is the song I was referring to. But but those were all, you know, it was just commentary and just so brilliant. And I will refer you to Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, the Jack White episode. He talks about this album and why it was so personal to him. And that's when I actually came on my radar and I listened to it. And I listened to it from start to finish, and I didn't put it down for a month. It is that powerful. It is just so amazing. I've never really been a White Stripes fan. I actually think they were really overrated in a lot of respects. And I haven't listened to his discography all that much of the other 5 solo albums he's put out. I know that one of them was a real like blues album. But this is him doing the White Stripes without Meg, and really and blending the Jack White persona with the White Stripes persona, and it works so brilliantly. There's this like interesting ballad, Archbishop Harold Holmes, which is just this weird cover song that is just so amazing.
The documentary that he's with Jimmy Page, The Edge, Incredibly Loud. The guy who shines is Jack.
Yeah,
it's like Jack and obviously Jimmy is impressive, and then Edge. and that's a disservice to the Edge, whose nickname is just so fucking stupid, dude. It's like, hi, my name is the Edge. He's like, dude, are you a wrestler? Yeah. But what he does musically and in terms of the amount of care that he puts into sound effects and pedals is underrated, just because his nickname is the Edge. And he is impressive in what he does. But in terms of musicality, physicality, and just attitude, I love that Jack was like, I'm in front of Jimmy Page and I will pay attention, but I will also shred.
Yeah.
And I love that the start of that documentary, it's him just assembling this rough ass guitar and just shredding the shit out of it. And it's like, okay. And he's like, yep, that works. It has a shot of moonshine and with his suspenders and stuff. You had mentioned this album. I had forgotten to check it out, and I was checking out other stuff. And I got distracted by the shiny things. I will listen to this because I've only listened to the first 2 ones, which are Blunderbuss and Lazaretto. And they're both good. They're both good. Blunderbuss is really good. Lazaretto is not something that hooked me. Maybe if I revisit it, it's gonna catch me more.
And like
but
I said, this music hasn't hooked me before, so yeah.
I was a fan of the White Stripes, but I never bought an album.
Mm-hmm.
And I do love Seven Nation Army. It is catchy as fuck. But you know, there are some top 40 songs that I just can't help but enjoy, and that's one of them.
I like it too. It's probably my favorite White. Well, actually, it's not my favorite White Stripes song, but it's one of my favorite White Stripes songs. But it does get overplayed a lot, and it is very maligned in the way that people view it. What I really love about this album, though, is his retrospective on music. This is the tour de force of going from jazz blues all the way to punk rock, and how that evolution is. It's almost a concept album in that respect. It's so beautiful, and it's him burying his soul throughout the entire thing and what moved him. And I really appreciated that. And this is really, it's just a fascinating study in the human being. And I gravitate toward that. This is the kind of thing I like. And this album, above all albums, when I listened to it from start to finish, I didn't want to stop listening to it. You know, there was not a lull. This is when we did our perfect albums. This is as close to a perfect album as I have been in maybe 10 years. You know,
wow.
I love every song on this album. There is not a lull for me on it. And there might be a song or two that is, you know, Paradise City-ish, but it has its merit. it has its merit, and that's the thing, and that's what makes it a perfect album, right? And so I think that's commendable, and yeah, there was it was the gap between him and everybody else was very wide for me. There was no doubt when I heard this album, it was going to be. It's very much like when I heard Wet Leg, I knew that was going to be my number one album of the year. This is very much the same thing. It just sung to me right away, and I never let it down, and I haven't let it down since. So since probably September when I heard that interview, it's been played 1,000 times. I just listen to it almost every day.
Nice.
And anytime I get in the car, and the only time I ever flip to Alt Nation is when That's How I'm Feeling comes on. So, and it's just this catchy, weird. It's such a weird, like easy lyric. It's like the simplest of lyrics. It's That's How I'm Feeling today. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And it just fucking works. He makes it work. And it's just so amazing.
Well, if you go to what is the song from the Breakfast Club? La 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 la.
Yeah.
They recorded that as a placeholder. They recorded that as a placeholder. He came the next day with a bunch of lyrics, and it's like, no, dude, that's the part. And it's like, but I got these lyrics, and it's like, write a book. Sometimes simple is what you need. It's what you need.
Simple. So keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah.
Look, this was a great year in music. I mean, this was a great fucking year. We've said that before, and I probably was lying, to be honest with you, because this was the toughest top 10 I've ever done with you, JD. In the 4 years we've done this, this was the hardest one for me to put 10 in there. And like you said, if you ask me tomorrow, if we record this tomorrow, it would probably be a completely different top 10 list. It just would. There's just so many good musically talented albums we're talking about, not just singles. We're talking about albums. And I'm so glad that was a concentrated effort by these bands, even if they are bands that we've all known and love. And yes, I would go see a Pearl Jam concert if Dark Matter was the front and center of it, for sure. I mean, I'm sure they got to go deep into their catalog and do shit, but that I don't like. But I will go through that if there's like 3 or 4 Dark Matter songs on here, because Dark Matter is really good. God damn it, I'm gonna go wash my mouth out with soap right now because I can't saying that. But no, it's great. I appreciate you, my friend, for this year, every year, all years. But musically, you're my kinfolk in that respect, because you give me stuff to listen to that I would never ever think about listening to, and a lot of it I gravitate to, a lot of it I don't, but a lot of it I do, and I appreciate that about you. And this conversation is always a wonderful one. It's the one I look forward to most of the year, and so thank you for being here and doing this with me.
Me too. It's been 2 hours, and we could keep going if we made a top 20.
God, we would never stop. One of these days, we'll do like an 8-hour we'll do an 8-hour show where we do our top 250 of all time or something.
Oh no, dude, that would break me. That would break me. It's 1,000 albums before I die, and I would struggle.
I would too. I would definitely struggle.
And people go like, "You've listened to 1,000 albums," and it's like, dude, I own more than 1,000 albums. And when I say I own, I mean that I physically own more than 1,500.
I'm getting close. I wouldn't say I've been to 1,000 concerts, but I'm getting close to the 250s.
Nah, dude, it's
since I was 16 years old, I've been going to shows. I'm 51 now. So, and I've gone to at least 2 shows a year for the past 20 years. So, and when I was 16, I went to a show almost every day. So, yeah, I'm pretty close there. I'm in the 300s, maybe, probably even.
I'd have to think through it and see how many shows I've gone.
I would too. I mean, I would not get them all. I would have to go back and forth and not get them all. But anyway. Anything else you want to add about this year before I end this recording?
At least the music was good, and the company as well.
You want to say the magic words for us?
Guys, remember, whether it's books, music, video games, or
Movies.
whatever, or movies. I was leaving that one out. Or movies. It's always time to go indie now.
God, it's too bad this, because I wish we had another like fucking rocker to play right now. And turns out we do.